Folks, welcome to a very special episode of Dynamic Discussions. We are here with Dr. Hartmann at the Erotic Heritage Museum here in Las Vegas. We're so excited that you allowed us to do this today. So, Dr. Hartmann, let me introduce you to the Free the Kink community.
Hi!
Give us the background. This is such a cool place. We haven't even gotten started yet. How did this get started?
Okay, so this actually, the museum itself isn't where it starts. It starts 30 years beforehand when my boss, Mr. Harry Money, who is, used to be someone who was he got into the world of adult production back in the 70s, like way a long time ago. And it was combined with Dr. Ted McElvenna, who was the president of the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality.
Oh, very cool.
And he was a Methodist minister. Well, Mr. Money ran afoul with the government. There were a lot of obscenity trials back in the 70s, and Dr. Ted was pulled in as an expert witness, especially because he was a clergyman and he was coming from the angle of celebratory sex, and especially in the 70s you saw a lot more natural sexual activity in film and so forth than you do in the commercialized adult film industry today. And they became friends. And they were friends until Dr. McElvenna's death a few years ago. And then Dr. McElvenna, he actually had an erotic museum in San Francisco for a little bit, only for about a year or so. But now I don't know the exact history of that particular museum, but apparently the city frowned upon it. Now I'm not sure if that's accurate because, it's been 40 years and stories change. But it closed very soon after it opened. And, Mr. Money was a prolific adult film producer, and Dr. McElvenna collected erotic artifacts from all over the world as a part of the Institute. And so they decided to get together and build a museum. And cool. Then here we are, 12 years later.
And you guys have all kinds of exhibits, and we're going to see some of them.
Yep.
But you also have something I read that I thought was really interesting was some of the art even here is even for sale. So
yes.
There's artists that put up, that's really neat. So if you come here, you can take a piece of this history with you.
Yes.
If you want to.
Yeah, so for instance, upstairs in the gallery that's near that actually doubles as a yoga studio, we have an exhibit right now by a gentleman who does three-dimensional artwork, who's also a rocket scientist.
Oh, wow.
And he is a rocket scientist, and you can buy those pieces.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, yep.
So as far as people who want to come here and visit, what are the hours? What is the admission cost?
Right now we are open from 10 to 7, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then until 10 o'clock, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because we have a show here called the Puppetry of the Penis, which is the ancient Australian art of genital origami, and all you have to do is YouTube it. It's been around for like 25 years.
Make sure you YouTube that, guys.
Yeah. And then we just added a show called Naked Boys Singing that comes from Off-Broadway in New York. And that starts on September 15th. So after September 15th, it's going to go to Monday, Tuesday until 7.
Very nice.
And Wednesday through Sunday until midnight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we're going to be a late venue.
Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah. The night crowds are definitely a lot more, what would be the good word?
Fun.
Animated, and they're a lot more lively.
Absolutely.
We have more of a cerebral crowd during the day.
What's really cool is people who are traveling into Vegas. It's nice because this is right off the strip.
Yes.
This is a 3-minute ride.
Yes.
In an Uber from
Yeah,
your
you
hotel.
can. In the cooler weather, you can walk here in about 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So. Well, what else would you like for everyone to know before we get started going and taking a look at the exhibits?
Well, I actually want to announce 2 exhibits that are going to open because they're both becoming my favorite, and I do this every time we open a new exhibit because it's just a little bit better than we did before. But we are getting ready really soon to open the Garden of Earthly Delights, which is a live version of the painting that was done by Hieronymus Bosch in the 1400s.
Which is one of my favorite paintings.
Yes, and we are bringing to life the garden. So the center panel is being brought to life.
Oh, that's
and we have animatronics, and we're trying to actually put a VR, like a VR broadcast, projector in there to bring the river to life.
Oh, that's
Goodness.
But we're still working the
awesome.
tech out on that. But the animatronics are already in, and then we're opening another one. We the world's largest sex bike here for about 5 years. And our centerpiece exhibit, where the garden now is where those centerpiece exhibits go and are rotated out every 5 years. We did have the world's largest sex bike here, and like I said, it was 5 years. It was ready to be moved out. It was such a popular exhibit, and people are still asking for it. We're building version 2.
Oh, cool.
So we're taking up right diagonally across from the garden. We're going to be building version 2, and that is going to be a 15-foot tall penny farthing bike with an animatronic woman on top, and we're going to have a bank of bikes that people can ride, and whoever rides with the most finesse gives her the ultimate pleasure. So that's being built now too. So I want to tell everybody about those, because those are live, animatronic, and participatory exhibits that people can take part in.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, do we want to go take a look at the museum?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
All right, you ready?
So this was the original entrance to the museum, and this originally had been the red light district. And a lot of these signs are from New York in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so they were brought here to the museum and put up, looks like we've got a few we got to fix before the new show starts. But this whole thing, the theater and this, was the red light district. I was appointed director in 2014 by Mr. Money, and I said, well, the museum had always lost money. Always lost money up until that point. And I said, well, I'm going to put my master's in business degree to work, and we're going to monetize this place. So the first thing I did is I started working on, well, what are we going to do? And I was actually approached by the Puppetry and Penis folks that couldn't get a venue anywhere else in town. I'm like, well, we can have nudity here, so you're going to come here. So we built them the Jewel Box Theater that was built specifically for the puppetry folks. So we decided to keep this half so people could still enjoy, a little bit of what it feels like to be in a red light district. And then on the other side, of course, we have the theater. And it's a 160-seat theater. And then, like I said earlier, we just added a second show. So we're going to go in here, and if you look on this side, you're going in the green door.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
You get
So, all right. So, thank you. So, as you walk into the museum, the first thing you see is a lot of political stuff, and that was actually inspired by Mr. Money and his experience with dealing with the government on a federal level, especially around obscenity, because he really felt it was important to point out the hypocrisy of the American government where it comes to sex.
Exactly.
And he decided to incorporate religious institutions into that. So what you see kind of around you, at least this part here, highlights the dual nature of our politicians, where they're going to legislate our bodies one way, but that they're going to conduct themselves a different way in private. And so the wall exchange is a part of that. I'm not sure if this was always here. We added this, I believe, in 2014, and this talks about political parody and how it's somewhat unique to the United States that we make fun of our politicians, and how important that is in the maintenance of our First Amendment rights. Okay, and you remember the fight between Larry Flint and the gentleman who used to run the 500 Club, Jerry Falwell. Yes, Jerry Falwell, and they had that big lawsuit about parody, and that is sort of what this exhibit is based on, is that lawsuit and what that meant to our First Amendment rights. So, we just added Trump during the previous election, the 2016 election, and he basically roasts everybody that comes in here. So, and we decided to keep it. We might add some other ones like JFK or whatever, but the point is that we need to be able to continue to parody our political leaders and the political system in general.
That's something that at TK on our website, we're looking to try to find, we're looking to get some artists who can help us.
Yep.
Similar to what Larry did with the magazine, we do with MTK. It's random.
Yeah. Especially right now, there's this movement where we're moving adult consensual activity into the realm of sex trafficking and so forth, and public health crises and so forth. It's like the conservatives realize they can't go through the obscenity route, so now they're trying to turn it into public health or trafficking.
They will do anything to stop us from having the freedom.
Oh, we just saw that with Pornhub, right? They reversed their decision actually, I think today or yesterday, but last week the banks were working against them.
OnlyFans as well.
Yeah, on OnlyFans. So what I decided to do, since Mr. Money wanted to keep this intact, is talk about how the political class and the 1%ers, I guess if you want to use that terminology, have worked against regular folks around sexuality, and how some governments have turned violent as a part of that. Everybody knows about the blood princess. She was the historical figure who bathed in the blood of virgins. We know that story. The mythology is that it was 650 virgins. What we wanted to point out with this exhibit here is she didn't actually get in trouble until she started killing the young girls of the aristocracy. When it was peasant girls, nobody cared. Okay? It wasn't until she started murdering girls in the aristocracy that she was held accountable and eventually walled up in her castle. What a lot of people also don't know is that she married at a really young age. She married her husband when she was 15. And he was already involved in these kinds of things, and she joined him in those activities, right? So now we get into the conversation. How does her being underage influence her? Is she a victim that then acted out, or is she a victim and a perpetrator? Right? So we like to invite people to really consider these things. Same thing along the lines of history, and we talk about the Weimar Republic, which was Germany from 1919 to 1933, where there was a flourishing of sexual sciences, and where actually the sexual sciences formally was born. Now there were individual researchers that were kind of doing stuff before that, but Germany was the birthplace of sexual sciences as a formal science. And you had advocacy for LGBT people, advocacy for birth control, and so forth, until the Nazis rose to power in 1933, which is what we go into when we go here. These are, of course, the shift from sexual research, sexual freedom, sexual expression, to the suppression of it, and how, and I highlight this here in the exhibit, how hate iconography can influence a society and also subjugate it. And where Hitler started was with sexuality. Some of the first people that went to the camps were sexual deviants and political dissidents. And then it escalated from there. So it started with sexuality. And this exhibit was actually born out of one of my previous curators found this pair of April Brown's underwear that ended up going up on the auction block for sale at a little tiny antique store in Ohio. And I traveled here to pick that up. And this is one of 3 pairs that exist in the world today. And then we have some other artifacts from both pre-Nazi Germany and Nazi Germany. Papers, medallions, etc. The point of this exhibit is to illuminate how you can go from this to this for very simple reasons. Economic reasons, right? The rise of the conservative class, what have you. So we wanted to point that out and invite people to question the iconography that's used around them, both in governments and corporations and religious institutions. So we had to throw some controversy in it. Then we go into a little bit more history that's not so difficult to surround yourself with, and this is a collection that was on loan to us from Melbourne. He's a very well-known researcher that was at UC Berkeley. He did the book also, voluptuous panic, where there was ephemera from pre-Nazi and Nazi Germany. This was France during that same era. And there's a pretty strong contrast between German art during the Second World War and French art during the Second World War. The French were just so sexual and lovely and colorful, and I'm like, you know, just how they managed to maintain this level of sexuality and beauty through so much horror is absolutely stunning. And it speaks to the soul of the French during the Second World War and how they tried to hang on to that kind of beauty and sexual expression. I love this exhibit. The German one was fascinating too, but it was so much darker. The French really did hang on to that celebratory sense that they have and had during that era. So this is on permanent display here. The German collection is actually what's getting shipped out today.
Is it?
Yeah, we had it for here for, I think 2 or 3 years. But the only thing that we have here that sort of speaks to this era is this particular publication here, where they talk about, you know, how the Nazi invasion affected them. They're very old, and it looks like we have to fix a few of them, but French art is just stunning. It's absolutely stunning. So, and these pieces are probably, I think the oldest one is 1901. So, yeah, a lot of really aged stuff. So let's talk about sex work. Well, Nevada is the only state that has legalized sex work. We have not been able to get to decriminalization yet, and there are sex worker groups who are definitely trying to head in that direction. But for right now, we have legalized sex work. We have since, let's see, looks like off and on since 1902. We've had legalized sex work here in Nevada. We have 8 counties that have licensed sex work. The most famous, of course, being 2 areas. One up by Reno, where the Bunny Ranch is. One down here in Pahrump, which is about 45 miles, 60 miles outside of Vegas.
The Chicken Ranch.
The Chicken Ranch, yep. The Chicken Ranch and Sherry's Ranch, I think, are probably the most popular ranches that we have here in southern Nevada, and then the rest are up in northern Nevada. And this is furniture from the Chicken Ranch, and then you have a video that the Chicken Ranch made, because a lot of people are like, what's it like? You know, what happens when you go to a brothel? And a lot of them still have this sort of down, you know, like southern kind of sleek, seedy sort of thing. And it's really not like that at all. I mean, you go to the Sherry's Ranch, and they got a restaurant there, they have some of the best fish. And I'm talking about food. The fish, they have the food is just, oh my gosh. The fish and the steak are just,
We haven't been to Sherry's, but we've been to the Chicken Ranch.
yeah, Sherry's, their restaurant is stunning. But this video kind of tells you what happens when you go to a brothel and you want to spend some time with one of the ladies and what that process is. To kind of demystify it and to normalize it. You know, a lot of people think that the people at brothels, especially nowadays, are being exploited, and many of the sex workers who work at brothels bristle at that. Right? No, I'm choosing to do this. Well, if we're going to talk about educating people around sex work, why don't we talk about sex education in general? And this is where you head into this area of the museum downstairs anyway. And we do have 2 exhibits that are being built. Like I said, one is the chicken, one is the garden, and one is the bike. So I'm going to take you into the Sex and Space exhibit. So I'm going a little bit backwards. Evolution is over there and Sex and Space is over here. We're going to go backwards today. This is an exhibit that was inspired by the work of Dr. Alex Leyendecker. He is an Air Force, I believe, lieutenant captain. He is researching reproduction in zero-gravity environments. And this exhibit was inspired by some of his scholarly work when we talk about colonizing other planets, being in space for long term. No official organization in our government wants to acknowledge it, but we're going to have sex in space if we're going to colonize other planets and so forth. And as much as astronauts are kept busy on their space ships and their space stations, human mating is what it is. Okay, it's a drive, it's how we reproduce and perpetuate our species, and it's a conversation that we need to have. What we're going to be adding to this exhibit very soon is we have an AI. She's sitting in my office. Her name is Emma, and she can interact and talk to you. Her skin is warm. She responds to you. She's going to have a conversation with her. Her head moves, her mouth moves, her eyes move. And she's going to be put here as soon as we get done with the other two.
This is cool.
Yeah, so she's going to be our robot that's coming to town. We're going to be in our space station. All right, so we're going to go a little bit backwards in time. This is the exhibit we were granted the permission to have these items here. These are from the very first Star Wars Triplex Parody. These are the speeder and some of the costumes from that particular movie. And here we just talk about, because we have the Sex and Space exhibit, we talk about parody and porn and how popular that particular genre has gotten.
It really has.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it continues to be.
every year at the ABN, it seems like he wins every year.
Yeah. But this is still the protected space area. So this is, of course, a standard love doll that people have in their homes nowadays. And some of these items are for PES. Who still works online. They're the electro-stim company. They're one of the originators of electro-stim for sexual purposes, and that is their electro-stim chair. But the reason we're here is we're still in the sex education area. This is all about sex ed over on this side, and then you have the evolution of human sexuality here. This is one of my favorite areas.
Oh, wow.
We have a lot of artifacts down here. Of course, we have our hominid skulls over there when we talk about evolution and reproduction. And when we moved from the African continent, it started spreading around the globe. So we brought a really strong educational component here. This is a replica of an exhibit or of a piece that's called Rationality. We're going to name ours differently because it is a replica, but we're going to make sure we highlight who we were inspired by. A lot of people love this space because you go from the past to the future, right? But this is like a really rich exhibit right here. And then, these are mostly panels. We have sex education panels in here. We have the sex ed. It's still very underfunded here in the United States. A lot of people are embarrassed about it. So we have our sex ed exhibit here, and it's basic sex education information. And then we have an exhibit over there that you all might enjoy. This is done by, it was sponsored by Justin Laymiller from the McKinsey Institute, and he just wrote a book called Tell Me What You Like, and it's about fantasy and what kind of things we fantasize about. And then we have a little survey, or a little monitor inside here that talks about different fantasies, and then there's a QR code that people can log into to continue doing some of the research that he's doing alongside. And he talks about what are common fantasies and so forth. Yeah, I think these take you to the research page where you can actually participate in the study. But he's a prolific researcher at Kinsey. He's very well known. And happily, he is a friend of the museum. So we love having his stuff here and helping him out with his research. We conducted a research study here as well to see what people's attitudes are towards pornography that come to the museum. And so if you enjoy any more than white, with an animatronic woman sitting on top, and a bank of spikes over here, and whoever rides with the most finesse will get her to moan, and it'll fill the air here and the sound in the museum, the walls of the museum. So we're looking forward to having that here.
That is going to be awesome.
And of course we have the famous 10,000 penny penis. We've had that here since we opened. It's holding up real well. The artist was happy to leave it here, and so we've had it now here for 12, 13 years. Still looks good. And a lot of people touch it. And a lot of people, they pose on it. Look, it's a big dick. And it's held up really well. I mean, this artist did fantastic work, and he showed the hard work. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go up the stairs here. Now we're going to get our way around. What is behind these walls here is my new favorite. And I've actually done some of the artwork here as well. I have a thing for flowers, and so I helped with the floral design and turning it into a garden. I don't get a lot of chance to be artistic, but it's still being finished up. But we have our woods, we have our river banks done, all of our little creatures. These creatures here were actually pulled out of the painting itself. And then we added some new creatures that were pulled from a digital exhibit, a newer version of the garden. She dances, little gnomes go in and out of her dress. Of course, we have the bird, and then the last thing that we have is a giant snake with a wagging tongue.
So when do you think this will be finished?
We're gonna have everything done this week except for the snake.
Oh wow.
Yep.
You guys are really moving.
Yep. So it's gonna be finished here. We're gonna open it without the snake, and then we'll add the snake later on when that artist is done finishing it up. But yeah, it's pretty much done. And then we just have to add a few things about the garden on the monitors and hang the info on those rods there that you see hanging up, and then this guy is done. And it's been 2.5 years in the making, so we're excited to see it finish up. And
But we'll get back up here.
yeah.
We only live 2 hours south of here.
Oh, nice. So, and we go to the second floor. We have more artifacts up here than we do downstairs. More art and artifacts. Downstairs is more of the whimsical stuff and historical. This, of course, is part of the Penny, the World's Largest Sex Bike exhibit. So her head's gonna actually poke up here, and then we'll have different monitors here showing imagery from the 1800s around bicycles and so forth. But this is the art floor, and you have everything from the World Erotic collection here to our Paris Theater over there, which was inspired by the Paris Theater that is now closed in Portland, Oregon. It was one of the few adult theaters left in the United States. Some of my favorites up here are, of course, the artwork. This is actually one of my favorite ones. Is our the Fawn Tribe exhibit, because you don't have a lot of art that's outside of the United States in museums. And this was actually, we wanted to make sure we decolonized the museum, right? That we didn't have any artifacts here that were stolen.
Sure.
And this is something that the Fawn Tribe actually create and sell, or created and sold in the 1900s. And this Legba is basically their version of Loki. But he also served as a fertility god. And what they do is that they carve out these pieces and they put the wood in the ground to help with the crops and with the harvest. But also with fertility, and that's why some of these are rubbed smooth, because they rub them for good luck.
Nice.
Yeah, and this was just one of the most beautiful exhibits we have here. I love this exhibit so much, and just the rich history of the Fawn people. And then you have a mixture here. You have different cultures, different eras. India, Africa, China, Asia in general. Then you have some European countries like Rome. You've got some of the stuff from the Pompeii cultural site. And just a mixture of all kinds of different things. A lot of Indian artwork, Kama Sutra and so forth. But I will show you some of my favorites.
What's with all the writing on the back wall there?
So this exhibit over here, these artwork was done by Tracy Fedor in her Jaded Vein project. She's a survivor of childhood abuse. And what she wanted to do is she wanted to empower other survivors to tell their story through picture art, either posing for the art or telling a story that they wanted depicted in the artwork. And this was the result. So for instance, this one is the Stag Queen, and this is representative of a woman who had been abused, I believe sexual abuse, and this was her protector in her own mind, right? So she would lean on the Stag Queen when she was struggling with the trauma. And so these are different stories that are told by different survivors. Now, my background actually, I trained in counseling.
Okay.
And I worked at a rape crisis center for about 4.5 years in Eugene, Oregon, which is where Tracy's from. And one of the most powerful experiences I had as a counselor was working with people when we did our storytelling group, where we would spend 10 weeks together getting comfortable with each other, and then at the end of the 10 weeks we would tell our stories of trauma. And I wanted this to be a sort of a similar space.
Very cool.
Over the years, unfortunately, it's gone from survivors telling their stories to defacing and graffiti. But we might rewrap this. It's just a popular exhibit, and so we've left it up. I wanted to actually have this be a replica of Pompeii that you would walk into, and it would be a virtual experience. But this is so popular with people, and survivors are invited to tell their stories. Here, so we are the world's only vibrating museum, so a lot of our artwork likes to tip because we have a train right behind us, so we vibrate as well. But we have a John Lennon piece, we have some Picasso pieces.
That works for us.
Yeah. My favorite pieces in this exhibit, however, are these leaves. These are 400-year-old Tantric Leaves, where they painted Tantric art onto the leaves and they're still intact. So, and this is what convinced me to convince Harry to buy this whole collection. It was a high dollar collection that had been sort of housed in Hawaii. And the gentleman who owned the collection was trying to open up his own erotic museum, and the Hawaiian government said nope. Nope. And what, 3 years later, the site that this stuff was on was buried by the volcano. Yep. Then we have the Hartman 58 collection. This is where some of our oldest antiques are. These deflowering tools are date back to the Shang Dynasty in the 1500 BC era. So we have some of the oldest pieces back here. And each piece has its own story to tell. We had a larger version of this. This is Sex on the Brain. We had a big, like a human-sized version of it. That's just a little version of it. But this is where some of our oldest stuff is, and each one of them has a really cool story to tell. Then we get into Roman history. A lot of people don't know how, it's estimated that only 1% of Roman and Greek art survived the Christians in the 2nd century and on till about the 5th century. But especially the 2nd century during the reign of Tiberius, that was a very sexual time in Rome. And what you see here are a few different artifacts. This is a replica of a sarcophagus piece that was carved during the 2nd century. Cupid used to be a sexual god during that era, and a lot of times his likeness was carved into the sarcophagi of the royals and others, the wealthy class. And we just thought this was so beautiful, we wanted to bring it here. And then you have, there are very few where you have a full collection of brothel coins, but because the sex workers of the era didn't know how to write or read, the coins that they were given, well, this was the myth. The coins that they were given had the denomination on one side and the sex act on the other, so that they knew what they were doing and what they were getting paid.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now, historians, they have different agreement amongst themselves, but that's the myth. So we're running with it. Projections from the 70s. Some of these films, they were already this way when I became the director here. Some of these films are Alex Dorenzi films.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Wow.
Yeah. So, I don't know where the rest of the collection is. When the Institute closed, they were moved out of the warehouses that they kept them in, but we had some of these pieces left over, and when the Institute came in to pull some of their stuff out, they left this behind, and we're like, yeah, we'll keep it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, sexual museum, because it's a very important part of sexual expression, and this was one of the letters in 1767 written by the Marquis de Sade himself. This is before he went to jail, and his seal is still on the back of this letter. And the translation from French is down here. So we wanted to highlight who the Marquis de Sade was, because a lot of people their experience with BDSM, the stuff they see in, women's magazines and the 50 Shades of Grey movie.
Yep.
And we wanted to highlight the history of its origins and so forth. Well, at least when it was. And this part of this artwork was done by some of the local kinksters, and of course we have some of the artwork that's done by Marshall Bradford, who's one of the local kinksters. He's one of the rope folks here. And I can't remember who the artist is of these particular pieces, but they seem to blend well with Marshall stuff. And then some of the rope work was done by the local folks too. I think we need to change our little dolls here because they have been having fun for 13 years.
They've had
Yeah, they need a little bit of a break. Yeah. This particular exhibit, before we go into the Sex and the Media exhibit, this particular exhibit was actually inspired by my boss. And I tried to fight him on it. I was like, no, I don't want to hear. And he goes, just do it. This exhibit is meant to highlight that predators come in many forms, not just male or male identifying or like we know, what predators look like. We think we know what predators look like. He wanted to point out that pathology, it takes any form. And I was really hesitant about it until he said, well, just see, what comes of it. If we can always change it up. Well, the interesting thing has been over the course of the last 7 years that I've been the director is not only the attitude of the people, but the shift generationally that I've seen over the last few years. People that are over the age of 35, women, they react to it and go, these women are beautiful, why are they going after kids? And the men go, where were these teachers when I was growing up? But under 35, and especially the Gen Z folks, have a whole different attitude towards it. They will actually validate and recognize that anybody can be predatory. It doesn't have anything to do with your gender, And so we've kept it up because we've watched this sort of shift in attitudes from people, and I've been fascinated by it. And as a researcher, I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep studying it. It's a live study, exhibit. So we've kept it up. We might change it out as the museum evolves. Since it has been here so long, we wanted to put in an exhibit that's, let's see, the 30th anniversary or the 40th anniversary of Caligula, the film Caligula. They actually, the people who curate that exhibit, they travel around with pieces from the film.
Oh, wow.
So we were thinking about putting that in here for a little bit of time. We're just waiting to hear back from them. And then, since we do talk about sex in the media here, this originally was the celebrity sex scandal room, where we had all the celebrity sex scandals in here, but the feedback we got was, I can just get this on the internet. So we were like, okay, what can't you get on the internet? Well, what you can't get on the internet is some of these films here, because they were filmed by the Institute, and they were meant to be part of the sex education classes there that depict natural sexuality, in other words, not commercialized sexuality. That's part of the education at the Institute when it was operational. So a lot of the films that are in here are real people having real sex.
Nice.
And there's a lot of hair. Because it's the 70s, right?
Yeah.
But this is kind of a break from the commercialized sexuality that we see nowadays in film and video, especially on the internet.
Yeah.
These are just folks enjoying fucking each other, and they just were okay with the camera being there. And the camera was sort of a silent observer while they were just having sex that they enjoyed.
Just recording real life.
Just recording real sexuality, yeah. And we wanted to also, what we also wanted to drive home is a lot of the pornography that's come out of the commercial sex industry is very white. And one of the things about the Institute is they went to where people were and filmed them in their natural environment. So we have some people who are in their 70s and 80s. You don't really see that in pornography very much, right? Commercialized pornography. And not just staged sexuality, but how people have sex at different ages and in different cultures and at different eras and times, right? So a lot of this stuff was filmed back in the 70s. The history of the Pete booth, which actually starts a lot earlier than a lot of people think. This used to be a version of the peep booth that was done back in 1,000 years before present time. I believe in ancient Sumatra, if I'm not mistaken. In the Middle East. So before we had video booths and stuff like that during the Victorian era, we had peep booths in the Middle East where they would pay coins to the guys who were carrying it. Generally, they were slaves of the kingdom, and then these little doors would open and they could look in at the woman that was in front. And then you have the peep booths of the 50s that they were usually in the barber shops. So men would go get a haircut because women weren't allowed to watch pornography.
Oh yeah.
Not in the 50s. So they'd get their hair cut and then they'd go in the back room and they'd watch some porn. And those were called beaver reels back in the day. And then you have the modern peep booths, the littler ones that were sort of earlier on in the 80s, and then the later ones that are more tech driven nowadays, with the bigger screens and the bigger booths and stuff. And this
Do they still have quite a few of these around?
I
didn't think they even
not
had
so
them
much
anymore.
anymore. They do next door.
I was like, they do here in Vegas.
They do
have a
here in
club.
You got everything in Vegas.
Yeah, but with computers and Pornhub. Do you have to go? No. There's a lot of traffic in the theater that they have next door, so it's still used a lot. Some people just want to publicly masturbate, and that's where you go to do that. So, and of course you have the overhead shot now of the garden. So you can kind of see where it's headed. She's very cool. I can't wait. We got her dress. The fabric right there is her dress. I can't wait to have her done because she has this sort of like really bitchin' gyrating motion, so you're just sort of hypnotized by her. And this bird is not supposed to have a head. It's supposed to be headless because it's the Garden of Earthly Delights. There's a lot of weird stuff in there, right? Our little rabbit with the horn and our little penguin dude and bird dude, those are all from the painting. And the painting does have a big giant circular river. We don't have the possibility of bringing water in here, so that is going to be sort of a winding river there, and not with water. So we had to work with what we had. Of course, is a sort of a mock-up of a 1970s adult theater. Up a little bit. There we go. Come on, come down. Okay. I got that fixed. So, this is kind of gives people a feel of what it was like to watch adult films in the 70s. The big theater, but we run movies that go all the way back to 1910. They did make some porn in 1910. And then, of course, we feature 1970s adult films on the side, which is when the adult film theater was at its height, was in the 70s. So, and we paid homage to the Paris Theater in Portland, which was one of the two that were left. Now I think only the Mitchell Brothers Theater in San Francisco is left. This one closed down, I think probably because Voodoo Donuts wasn't too happy being next door to them. Yeah.
Poor babies.
Yeah. And then we get into, originally this was our Lgbt Gallery. That's just now, it's now just a gallery because we decided we've had so many artists come in, both LGBT and non-LGBT, that were fascinating that we just wanted to feature them. But we do have some LGBT elements. This, of course, is for trans and gender non-conforming people, some educational materials, and then trans art. With a little bit of a primer on language and how we can respect trans folks. So that's this exhibit here. And this artist has been here for quite a while. We're really grateful that they're here still with us. And then this is the 3D perception. This is the gentleman I was telling you about who's the rocket scientist, and this is how he does his work. And this exhibit ends the end of this month.
Oh wow.
And it has been here for 2 years, and we are really sad to see it go, but a lot of it is sold. So if you look around, you'll see sold. So a lot of it, we bought a couple of pieces to keep. But his work is stunning. If you go up close, he actually left blemishes and skin texture intact.
Oh, very
How
cool.
he did that with you know, the materials that he's using, I have no idea. I've meant to ask him about it, but it's so detailed and fine in its expression that I'm really sad to see it go. His work is beautiful, and I love it.
It really is.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's just stunning work. And the fact is like, the thing that stands out to me is there's no alteration of the natural body that he actually cast. Whether it's got lumps, bumps, blemishes, or anything else, he left those intact, and I just think that is so awesome because whether it's photography or stuff like this, people want to clean up, and you know, it's like, let's have some natural bodies, right? Whether you got cellulite or dimples or blemishes, leave them intact. That's the body. That's what it should be.
Exactly.
So.
I say that all the time.
Yeah, folks in the community are actually very good about making sure that that message is consistent because you know, we've got a lot of erasing the natural body in mainstream society. So. And even those who get a lot of plastic surgery still have flaws because we're human. And that just about sums up the museum.
Thank you so much for giving us this tour.
I love giving tours, and I'm really glad you came in today. You know, excuse me.
Thank you so much. It was so amazing.
Come find me later.